The five senses just decode vibrational information into electrical signals, send it to the brain, and the brain decodes it into this construct that we think is outside there, but it's actually inside us. The only place this world exists, a so-called solid world, a three-dimensional world, is out there. Out there we think, but actually it doesn't exist out there. Out there is just vibrational fields. It exists in here as we construct it, and even the brain is a decoded construct as well. It's on an energetic level that we do the decoding, really. And this is very, very important, because what the manipulators do, because they've hoarded this basic knowledge and passed it over at the highest level of the secret society network and sucked it out of public circulation, they know that if we look out there for answers, believing that there isn't out there, instead of an illusory projection that's going on in here, then we're never going to change anything. Never going to change anything. And once you go, there's no out there, so where's it coming from? Oh, it's coming from in here, so this is where I have to change. Oh, there you go. It's what I call, and this is what most people do because of the suppression of this understanding, is they stand in the movie theater and they shout at the screen because they don't like the movie. And people say, you're crazy, you're never going to change the movie, shouting at the screen. Go back to the projection room, change the reel if you don't like the movie. And the projection is deep within us, you know. Some research I saw recently says that about only 5% of behavior and decisions that we make are with the conscious mind. I would say that's not correct, personally. I'd say 100% of what happens in this three-dimensional reality, it's only in our head, actually is a projection. And the conscious mind is actually not the decision maker at all. It's the observer and experiencer of it. It's like, it literally is the same principle as a movie projector, which comes from within what we call the subconscious, where all those patterns are there which we're being influenced by and are affecting our projection and our reading of it. And it comes out of the subconscious. And by the time it hits the screen in here, symbolically on the movie theater, it's a done deal. This is where the change has to take place within us to change the projection, which is our conscious mind's experience. And people are so caught in the conscious mind as that's the only level. I mean, they hear talk about subconscious and all that stuff, but really, I thought it. Well, how come that experiments have shown that the electrical changes and muscular changes to make an action happen happen a split second before the conscious mind has decided to do it? It's because they're playing it out. And so this talk about we must go within, this New Age must go within. And there's much about the New Age I would challenge, but this basic theme is absolutely right, I would say. And what the whole conspiracy is trying to do is get us to look out there. Let's go and protest, let's go and do this, let's go and do that. And you protest, and you have 1 million people on the streets of London protesting against war. And what happens? The war goes on, and then they start another bugger.
And it's just more dialectic.
Yeah, we need to change the projection.
This is actually something that we've come around to, and we're aware that consciousness is where the change has to happen, and then consciousness is actually also where you have to apply the change in your vision of reality. You can't actually just stop there. It actually has to permeate everything. So it needs to be embodied in this body, but we have to talk about who's in control. So if consciousness is in control, and I can use this to do, for example, what we're doing here, which can be used to further change and push the change and help the change, then this is a good thing. But it's not enough, in other words, just to go in like Buddha and simply sit in your mind and do nothing. Because doing nothing is also not the answer. We actually came here with a purpose. A game is being played out here, and if you stay in both consciousness and you're able to change your inner self and then mirror it outside and facilitate, which is what you're doing, obviously. And obviously you embody this in your life. And what we've been doing with Camelot is we're also talking about, you can't actually demonstrate in the streets and get real results, because it's really, you know, action reaction.
Exactly.
It's really that.
I agree.
But you can join minds and meditate. There are places for action that are actually really proactive and can change the world in a positive way. So it's kind of it's a very interesting, you know, dilemma for people, that they have to actually embody the change that they see and live it. That's you know, you cannot be a contradiction to what's inside. It doesn't work. There has to be a through line.
Well, I would put it this way. I would say that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that this reality, this holographic, illusory, physical construct, which we put together in our heads, and it's like a holographic internet, I call it, that is 100% a projection. And by the time it hits this screen, it's a done deal, in our experience. But a lot of people I come across and heard, they do think that if you just sit and meditate or just go within, then that's all you need to do. But this is a projection, and it's a projection from somewhere. So this projection is an open book of the inner us, individually and collectively. So what we play out in this experience says everything about our state of being. And you can say go within, and you can use it as an excuse to not go without. And you could go within, always I go within and I meditate. Okay, so what's happening in the projection as a result of what you're doing? The only projection that you're affecting is you sitting cross-legged in the corner. What else is changing? Yes, of course, you can change things vibrationally to an extent, but, you know, what is happening in the world is saying what's happening in us, and we kind of miss that connection. So if we're doing nothing to make a contribution to the kind of world we like to live in, then in the physical world, then that says something about the state of us within, that we're not doing that. I see so many excuses being made by people who have become to a certain extent aware of some of what's going on, so that they can justify to themselves why they're doing nothing. People say to me, you don't tell us what to do. And I think, well, actually, I talk about becoming conscious and all that stuff. I think, you know, that's a start. But it ain't for me to tell you what to do. Exactly. And if you think that I have to tell you what to do, then you're not listening. Because this is about taking power back to the point where we project, rather than looking out here at a done deal.
Absolutely. But there's an active paradox here, isn't there? Because that's not the whole story. Otherwise, you'd be sitting in the corner smiling and not talking to us here, and not working as hard as you do, and not talking to people to help the process of waking them up, so that they can then join you in this understanding, which we share with you also. It's important, in a sense, to pretend that all this is real, because this is the platform from which we can waken ourselves up and rejoin consciousness again. And so it's a paradox. It goes on at both levels. What you say is true, and this all is an illusion, and it all doesn't matter, but it's all important enough for us to be talking about it.
What I was saying is, in your presentation, where you're talking about consciousness and the mind, and the problems with staying just in mind, because there's a lot of brilliant people out there coming to brilliant conclusions, and yet they can't live it. See, the manifestation doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it becomes an intellectual, academic kind of point of observation, rather than consciousness, which is something that just is. The difference that I am now increasingly making is between mind and consciousness. And I would go further and say that we talk about my mind, your mind, his mind, her mind. I don't see it like that. I talk about the mind. There is the mind is a construct of the virtual reality universe which allows us consciousness to interconnect with this virtual reality. It's like a conduit, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever if it serves the experience of consciousness and serves our ability to interact with this virtual reality universe. What has happened, and I would strongly suggest it's been manipulated to happen, not least by these families and other levels of the manipulation, is we have been manipulated into a false identity, which is identifying who we are with mind, which operates directly through the body, and calls itself David Ayk, Ethel Jones, Charlie Smith, looks in the mirror and thinks that's who it is. And basically, you know, this is a biological computer. It's not a computer that just reacts to the way it's programmed to react to data input. It has the ability to, they call them living computers, biological computers. They're trying to build them now, so different parts of the world. It has the ability to assess information and make decisions on it. In other words, to quite a large extent, it has the ability to think. And what happens is, if we get caught in mind and self-identity of that reflection in the mirror is me, then, and not just my experience, then mind starts to govern our sense of reality. And mind is about division, apartness, hierarchy, rules, regulations, laws, limitation. And, you know, you can have someone in the New Age arena who talks about spirituality, talks about other dimensions, and which are other virtual reality games, I would suggest, other levels, but blatantly is stuck in mind and the values of mind. I mean, I hear New Age people talk about the Great White Brotherhood and the hierarchy of the angels and the stuff. That's mind talking. Consciousness doesn't do hierarchy. Exactly. It just is all possibility, all that is. And so the same mind construct, the mind, can entrap a New Ager as it entraps in another part of the mind a Wall Street banker.
It's just another religion. It's another religion.
That's the thing, you know. I was talking on an interview yesterday, and we got into some interesting areas. He asked me about religion. Well, religion and a political party and the New Age and all these things that we don't call religions, institutions, they're all the same construct. Right. And because consciousness just is. Consciousness doesn't think. Consciousness knows. That's why consciousness is silent when we access it, because it's got nothing to work out. The mind is where the chatter comes from, because it's constantly trying to work things out. What about tomorrow? What about yesterday? What did she say about me? Silence, consciousness. And so to hold you in mind, and this conspiracy is about holding the population in mind, because then they got you.
Absolutely.
Because that's their stadium mind. They're stuck in mind. If they were conscious, they wouldn't do what they're doing. To hold us in mind, they have to sell us something to rigidly believe in. So religion's brilliant example of rigid belief. And what is it? Once you rigidly believe something, you then call it a name. What are you? You don't say, I'm consciousness. How many people say, hello, who are you? I'm consciousness. Oh, so am I. Nice to meet you. No. What we are is what we do. I'm a journalist. I work in a factory. What are you? I'm a Hindu. I'm a Christian. Now, these are mind constructs. These are mind prisons that limit our sense of self. So once you have a religious belief, then you give it a name. And I have a simple philosophy about all this. If you can tell me what you believe and give it a name, you're in a prison. Because everything just is. We all just are. It's the force with no name, I call it, consciousness. And so you create religion, and then after the name, then comes the rules and regulations, this is how the construct goes, of what you have to conform to if you are going to be allowed to call yourself whatever name that's been come up with. You're not a Christian if you believe that, and all this stuff. But then you look at political parties. You have a group of people, they get together and they want to do something politically. So they give what they're doing a name. Democrats, Republicans, Labour Party, Conservative Party, whatever. So there's the name. Now come the rules and regulations that decide if you can call yourself one of the... You can't believe that and be a conservative. You can't believe that and be a liberal. It's the same construct wherever you look. Yeah. And then the belief system, as research has shown, rigid beliefs, the neurons fire off in a certain network and sequence in line with the belief, because what the brain's doing is then filtering, decoding reality and circumstance through the belief system, which manifests in the brain as the way the neurons fire off. And suddenly, instead of being free thinking, or even better, free knowing, conscious, you are operating in a tiny little box. And that box is basically the way not basically, it is the way your brain decodes reality. And so once you're into belief, rigid belief, then they got you. And that's why they want to sell you rigid beliefs.
Yeah. But there's an active paradox here, isn't there? Because that's not the whole story. Otherwise, you'd be sitting in the corner smiling and not talking to us here, and not working as hard as you do, and not talking to people to help the process of waking them up so that they can then join you in this understanding, which we share with you also. It's important, in a sense, to pretend that all this is real, because this is the platform from which we can waken ourselves up and rejoin consciousness again. And so it's a paradox. It goes on at both levels. What you say is true, and this all is an illusion, and it all doesn't matter, but it's all important enough for us to be talking about it.
It matches, Jim, in the sense that do we want to experience a reality that's very, very unpleasant and controlling and limiting and frightening and stressful? Or do we want to experience a reality that is loving, kind, where no one goes hungry in a world of plenty, where there is no war, because no one would even consider the idea that it was a possibility or an option? That's the choice we're making. We're always consciousness, and when we leave the body, we'll become at least much more aware of everything than we are now. So we're always conscious. We're all eternal consciousness. But the question is, what kind of experience do we want here?
Exactly.
You know, that's the choice.
What kind of, we call it, what kind of game do you want to play?
Yeah.
We have a chance now, because we are consciousness, to change the rules of the game, to make it something different than it is. Change inside, but let's also agree, because that's what's happening. That's what a consciousness revolution has to be about. It's not good enough for you, Дэвид Айк, to have got it. It's not good enough for us to have got it. What we need is for everyone to get it that's in this game here on this plane, because that's what it's really about. In other words, consciousness, and this is where it gets into what is consciousness. It's love. And what is love? It's actually the awareness of all of us.
Well, I would say everything is consciousness, but mind is consciousness, but it's a much denser expression of consciousness, and that's why it sees everything in terms of limitation. And as people become conscious, it can, to use the term of a friend of mine in South Africa, consciousness can conscientize mind and bring its awareness out of the level that it currently perceives reality. But I do think it's important that if we're going to play this game successfully, that we understand where the game is being played. It's not being played out there. See, what the five senses are doing, like I said earlier, is that decoding vibrational information, turning it into electric signals, and the brain then constructs this apparent reality out there, which is actually only in here. So the prime reality is vibrational. That's the prime reality. That's where the change has to take place. Because as the change takes place there, the five senses decode different vibrational states into electrical signals.
Like that wonderful story told by Michael Talbot in The Holographic Universe.
Yeah.
And I read that page over and over again when I first saw that book in the late 1980s. This is the story about the stage hypnotist who hypnotized the father to believe that his father was that his daughter was invisible. Mm-hmm. And then he was able to read an inscription on the watch held behind her body, because for him it was no longer there and reality had changed. It was physically different in his mind.
Well, this is the whole point, you see, that for a hypnotist to put a watch behind someone's back and someone on the other side of it read it, that is perceived to be impossible. But it's only impossible if you believe this world to be solid and real and out there. The reason it could happen is because the prime reality, and this, I can't emphasize this more, the prime reality that is playing out here is vibrational. That has to change or this can't change. And so if the hypnotist, as he did, implanted the program into the guy's brain not to decode the vibrational level, the prime level of his daughter, through this system into a holographic so-called physical form that we see, then he would decode all the other vibrational fields in the room into people and walls and furniture. But because it's like a computer being firewalled off, he doesn't decode the daughter's prime state, your prime state, our prime state, the prime state of everything, this vibration, the vibrational level, into the holographic, apparently out there reality. And so she doesn't exist in his head as a holographic form, i.e. supposedly physical, so he can't see her. Because she's not there, he can see what's behind her. Therefore he can read a watch even though she's standing there to everyone else in the room. They can see her. Why? Because their brain has not been programmed not to read that energy field into a holographic form. Now, just as a quick aside, how many things collectively are we not reading that are there to be read?
Right. Well, one of the things is there's more than five senses. Okay, and the heart is, you can't, see, it's not just the mind, it's actually the heart. It's really the heart and the intelligence of the heart that he could see through if he would only use that. So it's more than, we have, in other words, these are tools for us. Our mind is a tool, our heart is a tool, but you can't stay up here. You've actually got to go through the heart to really see. See, we don't see with our eyes. That's a construct. That's a mental construct. We actually see with our heart more than anything else, and through the heart. And so what happens is it's a union between the mind and the heart.
Yeah, I agree.
That allows you to see. And what you could put yourself in that man's position and say, how could the man see through the implant that was put into his brain? First of all, what did he do? He had to accept the magician's implant to begin with. So in the same way, we in society are accepting the implant, whether it's television or whatever, which is blocking our real view of reality. We're accepting it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, that what the hypnotist was doing was just programming the decoding mechanism.
Yes.
And therefore, he didn't decode a vibrational field, i.e. his daughter, into a holographic form. Therefore, he didn't see her. And I completely agree that the heart has the potential to be a massive part of our reality, decoding our reality expression. But we also have to appreciate that this conspiracy, while we see the George Bushes of the world and the Barack Obamas and people like that and the Kissingers, the real level of this conspiracy where the world is being controlled is on a vibrational level. That's why I talk about these reptilians that are doing this, and others too, operating outside this reality. They operate in the level of the vibrational level. That's where the manipulation's going. And we need to be kind to ourselves as well in understanding the challenges that we've faced, and not least trying to understand a world that is being manipulated